Good morning. The first item of business this morning is general questions, and in order to get as many people in as possible, I would be grateful for short and succinct questions and answers to match. Question number 1, Mark MacDonald.
To ask the Scottish Government what the implications would be for the Scottish budget if income tax was reduced in Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the UK Government has scheduled the Scottish rate of income tax for introduction in April 2016. The Office for Budget Responsibility produced forecasts in March estimating that by 2016 a 1p change in the Scottish rate of income tax would increase or decrease the Scottish budget by around £560 million. A reduction of around £560 million would have significant consequences for the Scottish Government in delivering its programme, including policies such as continuing the council tax freeze, which has helped around 1.8 million households.
Mark MacDonald.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that the calls by the leader of the Conservative Party in Scotland to reduce income tax by up to 2 pence, which would remove around £1 billion out of the budget, is yet another example of the sort of economic illiteracy that defines the Tories? And does he agree with me that it is ridiculous to call for a debate on taxation, while at the same time her party is denying Scotland the full powers of taxation that would allow us to grow our economy and deliver social justice for our people?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think Mr MacDonald makes a number of fair points in this respect, that of course the implications when we are operating in a fixed budget is that if a party argues for a change in taxation of this nature, then it results in a significant erosion in the resources that are available. And I think it's incumbent on anybody pursuing that strategy to set out very clearly exactly the implications there would be for the Scottish budget. Of course, it would be an opportunity today for some of that to be undertaken by the Conservative Party, but with the if it would be nice if they were all here. But I see that they're represented by their emeritus member John Scott. It was nice that one of them turned up for the day.
Question number 2, Willie Coffey.
To ask the Scottish Government how it supports students with dyslexia, particularly in written examinations.
Alistair Allen.
Assessment arrangements for students who require additional support during written examinations undertaken in schools is the responsibility of the Scottish Qualifications Authority. SQA has policies and procedures in place to allow adjustment in candidates' external assessment, usually in exams, for candidates with additional support needs where justifiable. Decisions about what support is needed for students with dyslexia in further and higher education are made by colleges and universities. Disability advisors within institutions will be able to advise these students what assistance is available to them for both their academic studies and written examinations. In September 2012, with the support of Dyslexia Scotland, the Scottish Government launched the Dyslexia Toolkit to help with the identification of pupils with dyslexia, and an enhanced version of this was launched at the Scottish Learning Festival this year.
Willie Coffey.
Can I thank the Minister for his answer? As the Minister will be aware, dyslexia can be a particularly debilitating condition and can often affect a person's verbal as well as written communication skills. Can you assure me that students taking written and indeed verbal exams in any language, including even English, are not penalised due to their disability, and if exam markers are made aware of a candidate's dyslexia?
Minister.
I should perhaps clarify that, on the whole, my understanding is that exam markers are not made aware of any issues of disability or indeed dyslexia that candidates have, and that all candidates are marked on the same basis. But during the course of the exam, certainly allowance every effort is made to make allowance for candidates with dyslexia, whether that be in the form of extra time or in the form of a scribe or perhaps computing assistance. I should perhaps say that with regard to a modern language, where the exam is actually dealing with the grammar and construction of the language, some of those allowances might be difficult to make, but hopefully computing or ICT allowances would be more than possible.
Question number 3, Neil Finlay.
To ask the Scottish Government how it protects the environment.
Paul Wheelhouse.
The Scottish Government protects the environment through its work to maintain and develop an appropriate regulatory framework, and through its support to regulatory agencies such as Scottish Environment Protection Agency and Scottish Natural Heritage, and through its own direct actions in fulfilling its responsibilities as Scotland's largest landowner. We also work with a wide range of stakeholders to help demonstrate the importance of our environment and to encourage best environmental practice throughout Scotland.
Neil Finlay.
The Minister will be aware that in March the Daily Record highlighted the issue of alleged toxic waste from the Edinburgh Trams project being dumped at Pumferston in my region. And despite numerous phone calls, emails, meetings with SEPA and his predecessor, we are no further forward in establishing whether this waste was dumped illegally and whether the contractor Bilfinger Berger will be prosecuted as a result. Can I ask the Minister, 8 months on, what is going on with this case? Because my constituents smell a rat.
Paul Wheelhouse.
I'm grateful for the question. I'd also remind Mr Finlay that his party voted for the trams and this party did not. This case has been ongoing since February, and there were a lot of technical complexities in this particular case. SEPA have been active in pursuing the issue and have also engaged with local representatives to keep them informed as to any potential risk. Quite simply, it's not yet been possible to conclude if the waste soil is suitable for deposit at the Drumshorel and Bing. The onus is on the waste producer to satisfy SEPA that the waste material is suitable for disposal at that site, and their failure to produce appropriate evidence has resulted in the lengthy delay in resolving this issue. However, I am happy to note that an agreement was reached at a recent meeting between the City of Edinburgh Council, Transport Scotland and SEPA to send the waste in question to another landfill site that is appropriately licensed to accept it.
Briefly, supplementary, John Scott.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister is aware of 14 sites at least of ash dieback in Scotland now. From discussions with scientists recently, I believe there may already be scientific solutions regarding treatment of fungal conditions such as ash dieback carried out in crop protection, plant science with crossovers into human treatment of fungal conditions. What scientific programme is the Scottish Government initiating with a view to finding a cure for ash dieback?
Paul Wheelhouse.
The member is incorrect in the sense there is no current solution that has been identified by the Scottish Government, or indeed to the UK Government at a COBRA meeting I took part in last Friday, that will cure ash dieback at present. The main strategy we are seeking to employ at the moment is to reduce the spread of the disease, and I'm glad to confirm there's still only 14 sites in Scotland, and there's 112 sites in the wider environment in England by comparison. We are in a position where the disease has to be slowed. We're working to identify resistant strains of ash tree, and that's the approach that the UK Government and Scottish Government, through Forestry Commission Scotland, are seeking to undertake.
Question number 4, John Park.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assistance is available for people with additional accessibility requirements seeking to undertake training or a modern apprenticeship.
Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, equality aspects of modern apprenticeships are an important dimension of our discussions with our partners and stakeholders about the programme. I have already held discussions on modern apprenticeship starts for disabled people with a number of organisations, including Remploy Employability Services. Our engagement with employers is vital to this, as in some cases we are trying to effect a change in cultures and attitudes within the workplace.
John Park.
I thank the Minister for that response. Can I highlight the case of a profoundly deaf constituent of mine who is trying to undertake periodical updating of his HGV and LGV training? He's paying for that training himself. He is finding it impossible to pay for the sign language support that we need to continue that training. We approached SDS, we approached the training provider, approached 8 agencies and NGOs to try and get support for this constituent to take forward that training with the sign language support that he needs. This is a situation where he is finding it financially impossible to take forward. He's fallen between the gaps, I believe, in the system. And can I ask the Minister, if I was to supply her with the specifics of this case, that she would look into it and our officials could provide me with a response and hopefully move this situation forward?
Minister.
Yes, absolutely, Presiding Officer. We're delighted to receive that information from Mr Park. As a former social worker, as a constituency MSP and as the Minister for Youth Employment, I'm always particularly interested in the individual cases where the system doesn't automatically help individuals, and I'm always more than willing to assist individual MSPs with cases that need some championing.
Supplementary from Dennis Robertson.
Is the Minister aware if the UK Government scheme, Access to Work, which is probably, I've said before in this chamber, the most best kept secret, is available to those seeking apprenticeships?
Minister.
I will find out that specific point for Mr Robertson. He does have a point that the access to work needs to be better promoted amongst young people as to whom it could benefit. But I think that's true actually of a number of schemes, and some of the work that I would like to undertake is to ensure that young people with disabilities are better aware of the opportunities that currently exist, whether it's our own national training programmes, whether it's our modern apprenticeship programme, or indeed other schemes provided by other members or other parts of government elsewhere.
Okay, question number 5, John Wilson.
To ask the Scottish Government what progress has been made in promoting community asset transfers in urban locations.
Derek Mackay.
We are funding the Development Trust Association Scotland to provide the Community Ownership Support Service. This service, which was piloted last year, provides help and advice to community organisations interested in asset ownership. During the pilot, the service provided information, advice and support to over 166 community organisations, 26 local authorities and 29 community organisations received intensive support. They also identified promoting interest in urban areas as a key challenge. We have continued the investment in the Development Trust Association and would ask them to identify further support to deprived urban areas as a priority group.
John Wilson.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. Could the Minister advise me when all local authorities will have a policy in place promoting community asset transfer, and in particular North Lanarkshire, which is currently in the process of transferring all its community facilities to an arm's-length trust in April 2013? What assurances can be given to communities on continued government support for community ownership of local community facilities?
Minister.
All 32 local authorities, I would expect, to take a proactive approach in recognising the potential to unlock local opportunities through appropriate community transfers. But to further support efforts in this area, that's exactly why the Government is conducting an exploratory consultation on the Community Empowerment and Renewal Bill, which presents potentially a massive shift in responsibilities and opportunities from local authorities and others within the state to communities, and I'm sure that the member would welcome the work on that bill.
Question number 6, Sandra White.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its international development strategy is in relation to the occupied Palestinian territories.
Minister Humza Yousaf.
The Scottish Government condemns the recent escalation of violence between Israel and Palestine. On behalf of the Scottish Government, I'd like to offer our sincerest condolences to the families of the innocent civilians affected by recent events. The Scottish Government's International Development Fund supports a robust programme of development work and is making a real difference to some of the world's most vulnerable people, as well as the member knows, providing funding to supporting long-term development projects in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. We also support humanitarian interventions around the world, which included a response to the crisis affecting Palestinians in Gaza in 2009 as a result of Operation Cast Lead.
Sandra White.
I thank the Minister for his response and congratulate the FBU for the Palestinian Trading Project, which the Government have provided money for. The Minister will all be aware of recent developments by the Israeli Government to construct 1285 houses in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, a move condemned by Foreign Office Minister Alistair Butt as illegal and under international law. Yesterday, the killing of Palestinians in Gaza by Israeli airstrikes, reminiscent of Operation Cast Lead, which saw over 1,000 Gazans killed. Can I ask the Minister if he agrees with me that these actions are against humanity and international law, and what role the Scottish Government can play in alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian people?
Minister.
The member raises two very important points. Firstly, on the settlement issue, I and the Scottish Government absolutely agree with the UK Government and others in the international community that the expansion of Israeli settlements is, as the member states, illegal under international law. The Scottish Government strongly condemns such actions and believes it to be contrary to the goal of achieving peace in the region. We call on Israel to immediately halt any expansion of such settlements as a matter of priority. On a second point, on the escalation of the violence, the killing of innocent civilians, be they Israeli or Palestinian, is to be utterly condemned, and we urge all sides to exercise restraint. The Scottish Government has previously stated, and I wish to reiterate, that it is wrong to collectively punish the people of Gaza for the actions of their government. The situation in Gaza continues to be a humanitarian crisis, and we join with voices in the international community and call for the illegal blockade to be lifted. The Scottish Government supports the view that long-term peace in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine is best served by a two-state solution,
We urge all parties to engage constructively, proportionately and, most importantly, within the obligations imposed upon them by international law to find a peaceful way forward.
Question number 7, James Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what consideration it has given to reviewing sentencing guidelines.
Kenny McCaskill.
The Scottish Government keeps sentencing policies and matters relating to sentencing under review and brings forward proposals for consideration by Parliament as appropriate. Our aim is to ensure that the courts have the powers available to them to impose both custodial or tough community-based sentences appropriate to the circumstances of each case. Proportionate and effective sentencing policies can assist in tackling specific issues. For example, you are 50% more likely to be sent to prison in Scotland for knife possession than in England and Wales, and the message is clear that people who choose to carry a knife risk significant penalties.
James Kelly.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. Can I draw the Cabinet Secretary's attention to the case of Andrew Mortimer? He was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment for committing sexual assault on 2 young children at Glenborough Nursery in Rutherglen. The sentence was reduced on appeal to 5 years and 11 months on the basis that no account had been taken of an early guilty plea. As I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary will be aware, this reduction in the sentence has caused much upset and anxiety to many of my constituents. In the light of those circumstances, will the Cabinet Secretary commit to an early review of sentencing guidelines which take proper account of the feelings of victims in cases of this nature?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, it's wrong of me to comment on any individual case, but on the general matter, can I say that we do believe, as I think it has always been the position of every administration, that sentencing is best left to the judiciary. That said, we are committed, and Parliament has passed the basis for a Scottish Sentencing Council. That is matters that I keep under discussion, and indeed just yesterday met with the Lord President, and it appears to me that the best vehicle for dealing with that will be the Scottish Sentencing Council that we have enacted in Parliament and that we are working with the judiciary to seek to deliver in due course.
Question number 8, Kenneth Gibson.
To ask the Scottish Government what it is doing to encourage the renewables industry to invest in North Ayrshire.
Fergus Ewing.
The member will be aware that in October the First Minister announced a commitment of £4.3 million from the National Renewables Infrastructure Fund for the Hunterston Offshore Wind Test Centre. Once fully operational, the facility, which is also benefiting from a £15 million investment from SSE, will be capable of hosting 3 full-scale wind turbines designed for offshore deployment.
Kenneth Gibson.
I thank the Minister for his reply. He will be aware that under the last Labour government, the UK lost 37% of its manufacturing employment, hitting areas like North Ayrshire disproportionately hard. Last night we had a meeting of the Ayrshire Economic Partnership, and concerns were expressed about the timing of when this investment will actually come to fruition. I'm just wondering if the Minister can give us some information as to when that investment and employment will be secured.
Minister.
Well, initial work is going ahead, and we expect the project to proceed relatively swiftly, and I praise the work that the Ayrshire Economic Partnership is doing. That work and others is contributing to the fact that there are now 11,000 jobs supported by renewable energy in Scotland, more than in the whisky industry, and the potential to develop offshore wind, wave and tidal would see Scotland leading the world renewable industry in that energy industry in that respect, with the possibility of 5,000 turbine manufacturing jobs in Scotland.
Very briefly, Margaret McDougall.
Thank you. Will the Government consider looking into the current barriers to community engagement and access to funding in relation to renewable energy, specifically the Kelburn Wind Farm in North Ayrshire, where the communities of the Garnock Valley are excluded from access to the funding despite their close geographic location to the wind farm? Minister.
Well, I would be happy to correspond with the member on that particular case. But we have very close engagement in respect of community renewable schemes. Recently, we have had 2 conferences in that respect. We have a target of creating 500 megawatts from community renewables schemes, which would generate £2,400 million of community benefit for communities all over Scotland that is making a massive contribution to economic development in rural and island Scotland.
Thank you.